All right, so get ready for a deep dive. We're about to explore Isaac Newton, but, and here's the curveball, not just the Newton you think you know.
Right, because we're not just talking gravity and apples this time.
This time we're talking about Newton's prediction that the world is going to end.
In 2060. Don't worry, we'll get into why he picked that date.
So folks, if you're listening, buckle up. We're diving into some serious prophecy here. We're talking biblical stuff, specifically the books of Daniel and Revelation.
Which, even for their time, those were like the twilight zone of the Bible. Pretty wild stuff.
And we've got actual calculations from Newton about this. Like, the guy used math to try and crack the end of the world, which, you gotta admit, is a little out there for the guy who also defined gravity.
It's true. See, back then, lots of folks were into prophecy. It was a sign of the times, you know. But Newton, he wanted proof. He wanted structure, even in something as seemingly undefinable as, well, the apocalypse.
So how do you even start? Does he just throw darts at a calendar? What's the deal with 2060?
So Newton was big into this thing called the day for a year principle. It's this old idea, Jewish tradition actually, that when you read about a day in prophecy, it's not 24 hours, it's a whole year.
Okay, so if he's reading about some epic event that lasts, like, I don't know, a week in the Bible.
You're talking a 7-year tribulation.
Yeah.
Right. It was a whole thing.
Right. So where does 2060 fit in with all this day for a year stuff?
Newton believed that the year 800 AD was the start of a big prophetic clock, if you will. He tied it to the growth of the church, which he saw as becoming corrupt. And he pointed to a specific number, 1,260 years, that pops up in a bunch of biblical prophecies like it's this big deal.
Add 1260 to 800, carry the 1. That's 2060. So we're talking, what? The world's going to end on January 1st, 2060 at like 12.01?
Well, not quite. And to be fair to Newton, he didn't think it was going to be some Hollywood-style fire and brimstone apocalypse.
Of less Armageddon, more.
More like a cosmic changing of the guard, you know. Newton thought it'd be the fall of corrupt powers, a reset button on the spiritual world, and a return to a purer form of faith.
Okay, that's a little more, let's say, nuanced than your average the world is ending prophecy. But this wasn't Newton's only foray into the world of, let's say, the unseen. He also was really into alchemy.
Oh yeah, and that wasn't just some side hobby for Newton. It was serious business.
So we're talking, like, trying to turn lead into gold. Was he trying to pay his bills on the side or something?
Well, there was definitely a fascination with transmutation. That was kind of the holy grail for alchemists. But for Newton, it went deeper than just making a quick buck. He saw it as another way to understand the universe.
Like a different kind of science.
Exactly. He was looking for the hidden structure of the universe, the same way he did with physics, but in this more mystical, experimental way. He was obsessed with this idea that there were these secret connections woven into the fabric of existence, and if he could just untangle them, boom, universal truth.
Okay, so if biblical prophecy was like Newton's way of looking at the grand scheme of time, alchemy was his way of decoding the hidden blueprint of, well, everything.
And a recurring symbol in all of this, both his alchemy and his biblical work, was the Temple of Solomon. He was absolutely fixated on it.
So why the Temple of Solomon? Was it just the cool name?
For Newton, the temple was this physical embodiment of divine math. Like, he thought God had baked these perfect proportions, these hidden geometric codes, right into the temple's design. And if you could crack those codes, well, you'd have a direct line to understanding, like, the mind of God.
Okay, but here's a question that always gets me. Why all the secrecy? I mean, Newton wasn't exactly shy about sharing his other big ideas, like gravity, but all this prophecy stuff, the alchemy, he kept that under wraps. Was he afraid of being called a heretic or something?
It's a good question. I mean, he was living in a time when you could get in big trouble for having unorthodox beliefs. But there's also this sense that maybe Newton himself wasn't totally sure what he was sitting on. Like, did he think he was about to crack the cosmic code and he didn't want to tip his hand? It's a mystery.
And this is what gets me about Newton. This is a guy who literally wrote the book on physics, on reason and logic. But then you've got this whole other side of him diving deep into prophecy, alchemy, the whole bit. It kind of makes you think, maybe we haven't got Newton figured out as well as we thought. And maybe, just maybe, those big, seemingly unsolvable questions about the universe, about life, death, the whole shebang, maybe those questions are worth asking, even if we're not sure we'll ever find the answers.
Even if it means getting a little comfortable with the unknown, embracing the mystery, a little like Newton did.
And on that note, folks, we're going to leave you to ponder. Did Newton have it right? Was he onto something huge, something world-changing? We'll probably have to wait until 2060 to find out. But until then, Keep those minds open and keep asking the big questions. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to crack the code.